Miranda Devine, thanks for your company.
Pleasure.
I want to start on your column today, if we could just bring it up to have a look at it. I think it's an interesting topic, and it's not one that's based on ideological distinctions. It's very much about what people think. Right across the bottom there, rather than me summarising it and then you telling me where I'm inaccurate, what's the essence of what you're writing there?
Well, look, it's about the bravery awards being given to these hostages from the Lindt Cafe. And it's also about the fact that they've sold their stories. I mean, I find that really distasteful, that they're profiting from this tragedy. And the fact that the Prime Minister has recommended bravery awards for all of them, I also find distasteful, because I don't think that many of them, especially a couple of the men who ran out early, leaving behind a pregnant woman, deserve bravery awards. I mean, they were terrified, they had no choice. The people who deserve bravery awards are the police. So, look, I think it's a complicated ethical issue about, you know, what would you do if you were in that cafe? Would you choose?
Well, you don't know, I guess, is the answer there. And I don't think you're being critical necessarily of the decision to run by people either.
I don't know what I would
do. The
do.
decision to give bravery awards is something that I completely agree with you about. I think it's ridiculous.
Ridiculous, yeah.
At the risk of us all agreeing on this, let's see how we go. I'll go to you first, Sharri, and then we'll get Osman's view.
Yeah, I think the police should definitely get bravery awards, especially the police who stormed into the cafe at the very end. But checkbook journalism is a really difficult ethical dilemma. Should these, you know, and some of the hostages, Marcia Mikhail, the bodybuilder, the mother of three, she's getting $400,000 from Channel 7 for her story. The 4 Lindt Cafe workers.
Is she giving that to charity? There were early reports that she was, but I haven't seen any discussion since then.
There's reports from her lawyer that she might set up a foundation and give it to that, but we don't know. The 4 Lindt Cafe workers are in a package deal getting $1 million. It's a difficult question. Should they profit from it or shouldn't they?
What's your view?
Well, I don't know. I can see both sides of it. They've been
you can't sit on the fence on this program. Take a stand.
Checkbook journalism is difficult. They've been through a really tough ordeal. Why shouldn't they make some money from it on the one hand? On the other, you know, it was a terror attack, I believe, and it did affect our entire society. 2 people lost their lives in it. Should they be walking away with, you know, a huge financial sum? I don't know.
OK, I want to give you a chance to respond in a moment, Miranda, but first, Osman, what's your view on it? Do you agree with them both? Have I just done something I didn't expect here?
Yeah, well, I didn't expect the first time I'd be on the show with Miranda and Sharri that I'd be agreeing with them as well.
But hallelujah.
Maybe we can get into some arguments later on. But no, I do actually agree on that principle about profiting from this episode. It was a really traumatic experience, obviously, for the people involved, but it shut down Sydney for a couple of days. The whole city felt really impacted by what had gone on. The fact that individuals involved will make, you know, up to $500,000 out of this, but also the media organisations themselves who are willing to give that much money, presumably because they expect they'll make it off, actually running these exclusive interviews with them.
And that's where I wanted to take this by bringing it back to you, Miranda, for a final wrap-up on this before we move on. We all seem to be in agreement across the political spectrum about the fact that there's something not quite right about this. Sharri, I should say, is sitting on the fence, but I think I know where you really stand. At the end of the day, though, exactly as Osman just said, people or the media organisations are doing this presumably because they think ratings will be high. That's because we're all going to watch, or at least some people are. A lot of people out there probably as well. Where's the disincentive, I suppose? How do you stop this sort of thing? I mean, the government doesn't have to give the bravery awards, but on the other half of what you were talking about.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, I'm going to watch it. It's going to be a huge ratings when it looks really interesting. But look, I just go back to France. I've just come back from France, and the hostages in their terrorist situation didn't ask for money. They just spoke. And I just feel that this, as Osman was saying, this was a public issue. This was something we all shared. We all were horrified and watched the whole thing unfold. There was an enormous amount of public money and public sympathy and public, I guess, authority placed on rescuing those hostages. So I think that really their duty is to, this is a special case, their duty is really, if they are willing to tell their story, to tell it to the public for free, not to be parsing it out by dollars. And because the other problem with the money is that it warps the story in the end.
Yep, no, I completely agree with you on this one. Here's an issue where the panel is more likely to disagree. Our top story tonight, higher education reform. Christopher Pyne, who of course is the Education Minister, is trying to get this deal done with the Senate. He looks like he's walking away from what his ERC tried to impose on him, which was the 20% cut to go with the deregulation, but he still can't get the crossbenchers on board. I think that's ridiculous. I think that the higher ed section looks like it is half pregnant. As soon as you turn to a situation where you don't have deregulation but you do have uncapped places, that is not a sustainable situation. You either have to, in my view, go back to capping places to retain costs down, or you have to entirely deregulate to let the universities compete freely. Let's see what the panel think on this issue. Sharri, starting with you, what's your view?
Well, I think they want to start the year off afresh. They want to actually get some legislation through the Senate, which has been impossible for them so far. They need to get some of their budget measures through, so they're going to take a $2 billion hit on this by, well, making the legislation half pregnant, if you want to put it that way, or compromising on it. Look, they're going to have to start compromising. They need 6 of the 8 crossbenchers to get on board. They have no other option.
See, I don't mind them cutting the spending. Getting rid of the cuts to the university sector. You can argue.
Of course you don't.
No, of course I don't. Yeah, funnily enough, disclosure, I work for the University of Western Australia. But that said, whether you do or don't cut the sector, I think you have to deregulate. I agree with the government on the issue of deregulation. I disagree profoundly with Labor on the issue of not allowing deregulation. Osman, what's your view on this? If you don't support deregulation, what do you do to make it cost sustainable?
I think your analysis about the issue around this sort of half-baked deregulation that we've got at the moment is a real issue. Like, the Labor government's priority was getting as many students into the system as possible, so it could say we've massively expanded higher education in Australia.
Do you think that's good?
I think that is good, but I think the problem was that at best they kept funding flat. In a number of areas, actually cut funding. So we had more students going into
research was a real problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's interesting about what the coalition's trying to do, I think Sharri's totally right. The priority at the moment for the government is to get a win. It's not so much about reform of the sector anymore. It's about getting something passed through the Senate. They're looking like a bit of a shambles at the moment. They're looking like they're being dictated to by the crossbench, and that's not working for them. It's interesting that when this bill started, it was $5 billion in savings. It was predicated on a supposed budget emergency. We then lost about half of those savings when the government scrapped the proposal to charge real interest on HECS, and now we're going to lose the next couple of billion because the government's just keen to get deregulation through. I think the difference between probably you and I, Peter, and me, maybe the other panellists, is that given that Australia is the second lowest spender, a public spender on higher education in the OECD, I think there's space for the government to increase funding before we look to putting the burden onto students.
I don't necessarily disagree with that, maybe not in the current fiscal envelope. That'd be something that we might disagree on. Miranda, your thoughts?
Look, I think this is another bomb from Julia Gillard, and the fact is that now what's happening with the TERs, the university entrance ranks, is a joke. There are universities, I know of universities that are offering, lowering their TERs.
Well, it's ridiculous. It's well below 50.
Yes, and they're giving, bonus points, just offering them to kids who haven't even applied for them. So, because all they want is bums on seats, so they get the funding, and that is just a recipe for disaster.
See, a quick right reply on that, Osman. I mean, you say that you think it's good to open up to more people. Theoretically, I agree with that because it sounds like it's egalitarian. We know that people earn more when they get better educated. But if you're lowering standards as a result, and that's the way I see it, certainly when I'm marking essays, that's my worry.
No, I think that's spot. I think it is true, and Miranda, you've explained it well, that universities have an incentive to enrol as many students as possible because that's really the only way I think they can get funding. The problem is we focus on the statistics about how many are going in, but we don't look at what's happening at the other end. I think about half of students who enter university with ATARs or TERs of less than 50, they drop out within their first year.
So it's actually not.
Then it's not good for the students. They should be at TAFE. No. They should be applying a trade in some other way that is benefiting them as well as the nation.
And they certainly shouldn't be becoming teachers.
Yeah, well, there's far too many on teachers. Quick response, though, Sharri, from you. I want to, if I can, sorry to direct, but I want to sort of get your particular answer to what you think about where the government will react to this. If the Senate does block it and they're trying to compromise so much with them, will we as voters blame the senators in the crossbench for being unfair, or will this fall on the government even though they're trying to compromise?
I think what we've seen so far is that the public is very unsympathetic to the Abbott government, and when they're having difficulty getting their budget measures through, the blame goes directly onto them for not prosecuting the case, for not doing enough to sell the message, and Joe Hockey, more than anyone, really has borne the brunt of that because he hasn't been out there trying to convince us why any of the particular measures are good and why they need to be implemented.
All right, hold that thought. Stay with us here. You're watching PVO News Hour. When we come back from the break, we'll delve into the latest from the Queensland. It's a fairly close one, despite the seat differential, the Queensland election campaign.
Australia's biggest stocktake sale at Myer is in its final days, with 40% off the original price of Manchester and 40% off the original price of travel goods. Conditions and exclusions apply. Hurry, ends Monday. Don't miss out.
At Hungry Jack's, just $1 gets you your choice of large frozen Coke, Fanta Mango or Fanta Bubblegum. There's nothing cooler this summer. All large and all just $1.
Nothing beats Mini Baby Bell. Tastes so awesome. We just love it. So does Mum, because it's made with loads of milk and it's totally natural.
Mini Baby Bell. We love it.
So colourful. So smooth. So free-flowing. Experience the effortless writing of Papermate Ink Joy. Also available in these models.
Are you the type of traveller who loves a red-hot deal?
Like Los Angeles. Return airfare from $1,178. Or take a great American road trip, like the Best of the West. 13 nights and 14 days car hire from $1,689. That's just $130 per night. Highlights include Los Angeles, Grand Canyon and Las Vegas.
Call 131 600.
I don't know why do we... I've got to go. I'll call you right back, okay? Yeah, I'll call you back.
When you're a parent, it's nice to at least try to keep in touch with the outside world, isn't it? That's why IONET now offers mega fast broadband, local and national calls, and calls to mobiles for only $79.90 a month. Talk forever. Talk often.
She's good.
Cute. Upgrade your life with IONET.
This is a newsflash from Excelor. Don't let fungal infections damage your nails. You might even lose them. Excelor fights fungal nail infection by penetrating every layer in the nail. With Excelor, you see results as soon as the new nail starts to grow. Ask your pharmacist for Excelor.
On this week's Rich Show, Scott Morrison, the new Minister for Social Security, dropped from immigration, or should I say promoted from, and he's going to try and sell to us a whole lot of things that none of us are going to like. Scott Morrison, always good value. Tim Wilson from the Human Rights Commission, he's pointing out that what got Charlie Hebdo into so much trouble in France, you can't even print here. Free speech, do we really have it? I don't know. And then Luke Foley, new opposition leader in New South Wales, who has Everest to climb if he's going to win. That's this week on Rich Show.
Breaking news, Greens candidate wants us to talk about Taylor Swift. Yikes, we're not going to be doing that. All right, we're going to get the panel's thoughts on something else, the Queensland election, soon enough. A few stories on that first from our reporters up in Queensland. But before all of that, let's take a look at the news headlines. The government has vowed to push through with controversial education reforms. They are controversial. We have been discussing it. The US President Barack Obama has delivered his 6th State of the Union address and has declared an end, not so sure about this by the way, to the shadow of the crisis, largely economic, in the United States. Several properties on the New South Wales mid-north coast have been raided in the search for that 3-year-old William Tyrrell who went missing in September last year. All right, let's move to state politics now. The Queensland Premier, Campbell Newman, has made a flying visit to Cairns for today's campaigning. Our reporter up there, Cameron Price, is following the LNP campaign and he filed this report.
The seat of Cairns is an incredibly important one in the context of this election. Labor heartland since 1904, the LNP finally managed to win over voters at the 2012 election. Now, Campbell Newman is fighting to keep a hold of it.
You don't get those sort of opportunities these days in central Singapore.
In the CBD.
Central Singapore, no.
The Premier flying in for a whirlwind visit, just 5 hours on the ground, but enough time to tour the $400 million high-rise development for downtown Cairns, backed by Singapore developers.
Chalk and cheese about where Cairns was 4 years ago and where it is today.
Recent polls in Cairns suggest Labor is on track to retake the seat. The Premier arriving with a host of promises to try to swing momentum back to the LNP. $30 million for a rapid police hub, $15 million for a new school and $10 million for local road upgrades. For the first time today, a response from the Premier to claims from Alan Jones and more recently the State Police Union that he is dishonest.
They've had to do a few things in this campaign. They've had to get federal Labor politicians to come and help them, and they've also resorted to the same tactics They have nothing. There is nothing.
The Premier says he has nothing to hide and that the allegations are simply a Labor smear campaign. In Cairns, Cameron Price, Sky News.
Meanwhile, Labor's leader, is it Anastasia Palaszczuk? Is that
Palaszczuk.
Palaszczuk, all right, well, anyway, I don't know. Come January, the end of this month, I won't need to know it. Anyway, she's taken her jobs plan to key marginal electorates in Brisbane, but the message was overshadowed by Labor's uncertainty on how it would manage relations with mining giant, what is this, Adani? I've read all about it. Is that how you pronounce it?
Adani.
Adani, there you go. And their plans to develop Abbott Point. Don't throw it out of the package yet. Is this the issue that Alan Jones is so outraged by?
Well, he's outraged about fracking in his hometown of Ackland, but this is just a piece of dirt that's been dredged up, saying that Campbell Newman's allowing fracking to go ahead because he's, LNP's paying, getting paid by it.
In the spirit of not mixing news and opinion, let's take a look at the story.
After unveiling a raft of jobs-focused policies yesterday, Labor today set about making the hard sell, pitching to voters their economic vision.
The measure of how your economy is going is whether or not you have a job.
But it's a pitch that has been criticised for being light on policy, with the centrepiece of their announcement yesterday a modest $240 million job training program.
The Labor Party don't have policies or plans for this state, and instead they resort to a negative campaign.
But it's Labor's policy on the Abbott Point development and the dumping of dredge spoil that is the source of some confusion. The LNP has committed to dumping dredge spoil on land rather than on the Great Barrier Reef, but Labor says the spoil would not be dumped on the Cayley Valley wetlands if they were in government. Mining giant Adani has already received approval to dump the spoil at sea, but the opposition leader couldn't confirm whether or not this would go ahead, with both options subject to legal challenges.
We're going to have to go through line by line.
Anastasia Palaszczuk kicked off her campaign here in the electorate of Ferny Grove, where a small rally was held to protest the LNP's cuts to TAFE and support Labor's $34 million program to rescue TAFE, announced yesterday at Labor's launch.
The fees are so high that people cannot afford to go to them. How can you get trained if you can't afford in the first place to get the training? It does not make sense. They have ripped $90 million out of TAFE over the last 2 years.
Labor says reform starts with their plan to hire 100 teachers. Brooke Wiley, Sky News, Brisbane.
And Joy, Sky News live on Friday as we host, well, we say we, the collective we, it's really David Spears, the only People's Forum of the Queensland election campaign. There you go. Political editor David Spears will moderate, as always, as Campbell Newman and the opposition leader for the Labor Party face 100 undecided voters at the Broncos Leagues Club. We'll have all the build-up from Brisbane and then the forum from 8 p.m. So someone's trying to text me at the same time. Anyway, that's 7 p.m. Queensland time, Friday night, right here on Sky News. David Spears will know her name, there's no doubt about that. All right, Queensland election. Let's get the thoughts of the panel. Firstly, just quick quiz. Who's going to win and by roughly how much, Miranda?
Campbell Newman by, a comfortable majority.
Including his own seat?
Don't know, but, there's a chance. Yeah.
Osman?
Look, I think the LNP will probably sneak through, but it seems really...
You look like that was coming through real gritted teeth.
It is extraordinary that after being reduced to like 6 seats and now clawing their way back up to 8, that Labor's in a position where they might win, that we're even having this discussion and as a news package is worth filing. But it seems really difficult to see how Newman can hold on to his seat in the face of the swing against the LNP.
See, Sharri, your general views and also the seat that we've talked about here, because both Miranda and Osman seem to have suggested that they think that Campbell Newman might hold on. I would have thought that if he wins the election, which he looks likely to, he just might get over the line with all that momentum and money going into the seat.
Yeah, it would be really odd if his electorate don't vote him back in when surely you'd want the Premier in your own seat, but that's what the polls are showing, that he's at risk of losing it. So it'll be interesting to see.
You're pretty confident he'll win the election?
I'm not confident. I don't think anyone's confident, but yeah, the polls show that he's slightly ahead. It could go either way over the next couple of weeks and could be influenced by the federal government as well. We'll see. And possibly Alan Jones.
He's going to win. Don't you worry about that. Campbell Newman will win, but he'll lose some skin on the way through. He's not allowing Tony Abbott to visit. We talked about that last night. I mentioned to David Coleman, who's a New South Wales MP, that he'd probably like to see Tony Abbott visit because it'd get him out of New South Wales. All right, anyway, we'll move on. The major shareholder of Channel 10, billionaire media mogul Bruce Gordon, may thwart the proposed sale of the network to Foxtel and the Discovery Communications organisation. Now, reports had suggested that the other major shareholders, including Lachlan Murdoch and James Packer, might be supportive of the potential bid, but Mr Gordon is believed to have concerns that the likely offer is not a good one, in his opinion, for small shareholders, even though he's the largest shareholder. All right, got to declare some sort of interest here. Obviously, that Foxtel affiliation with News Corp, etc. We've all, not you, Osman, but the rest of us have got some version of an affiliation there that is necessary to declare, including this network. Sharri, you're the media editor at The Australian. You would have been following this closely. It was a report by one of your team today that made me aware of this story. What's your view on where it's going to go?
Yeah, it was in our business section. Look, Bruce Gordon, Bermuda-based billionaire, has a 14.9% share in 10, so he's the largest shareholder. And it is a problem if he's not supportive of it, and he's indicated that. He said that he thinks 10 should remain in Australian hands rather than sell it to Foxtel and the Discovery Group for about 23 cents a share. I don't necessarily know that everyone else on the 10 board is committed to that sale. I think what I'm hearing is that the offer was quite disappointing, and so that they might be inclined, and this is, you know, irrespective of Bruce Gordon's views, they might have been inclined to wait for a while, see if the ratings and the performance of 10 improves, and so therefore the price would be higher, or hold on to it.
But isn't the risk that the performance doesn't improve and it's a company that ends up becoming insolvent, Miranda?
Oh, I don't know.
You're nodding away there, Osman.
Well, no, I think I'm not an expert on this issue, but having followed a little bit about this recently, 10's been in trouble for a long, long time, I think.
But they're turning it around, and the ratings just recently have been very strong.
The Big Bash is awesome.
They've had
the Big Bash has been brilliant.
Do people watch programs other than The Project? I think it's a project-led revolution.
People watch programs other than The Project.
On Channel 10.
Project's on now.
I actually don't watch.
Can you not say that?
I only think I've watched The Project once before, but I mean, my understanding is that's the only program from 10 I know that
they've got a few new shows this year, and you know, including I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, which they're hoping will have some big audiences.
Weren't they running out of celebrities to get on that program?
No, I don't think that's the case. In the UK, that's had 15 million viewers and 11 million on opening night. So that we'll see, that should work here. And they've got Shark Tank, which they're expecting to be quite popular with audiences. They've got another season of The Bachelor plus The Bachelorette for the first time. And as you say, a strong start with The Big Bash, which had about 600,000 viewers. So I think it can only go up from here.
And advertising dollars in sports, that's where it's at, because you can't just record it and then just charge straight past all the advertisements. You have to sit there and wait. You don't watch, of course, you go and get a drink or something. But nonetheless, advertisers are fooled. There you go. All right, let's move on. World oil prices continue to tumble, no doubt about that. There is a new report from JP Morgan that predicts that the downturn in prices is well and truly here to stay. The report sees JP Morgan slashing its outlook for oil prices this year to $49 US per barrel, down from what they forecasted $82 not that long ago. The recovery predicted for the following year, 2016, is a slow one, it has to be said, adding just $8 a barrel. Now, the lower oil prices, while helping global economic growth to some extent, are also a sure sign that economic conditions are going to be tough in the coming years. Now, there are all sorts of implications for this, global economic implications, but also domestic political implications in the lead up to the May budget. How do we see this? Let's start with you, Miranda.
Look, I don't think it's all bad. You know, that means that the average person has got $20 or $30 extra a week at the Bowser that they can put in their pocket.
Are you saying we should put up the petrol excise?
Not at all. I'm just saying that's good. You know, that is like the equivalent of a tax cut. So I think it's a little bit of stimulus to the economy, and you know, it floats through to all prices. So I don't think it's that bad. And look, I mean, you know, the downside, of course, is the Saudis are they've got tons of money. They're trying to regain their market share, and they're just going to keep on going until, you know, they're last man standing.
Well, Osman, as a Green, you'd have to think this is a bad thing, because you'd want higher prices to have lower emissions as a result of people making price point decisions. But I say that, but then the Greens didn't support the increase to the reindexation of petrol excise.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, some of the arguments are sort of similar. So obviously a lot of motorists will welcome the relief they'll find at the Bowser as a result of the lower prices. But, you know, for a lot of people, that might mean they no longer catch the bus or the train and now drive more. But I think the main reason people choose to drive or choose to take public transport is about availability and about accessibility. Oil prices are a small part of that. But if you live in a location, regional New South Wales, Port Macquarie, where I grew up, there isn't public transport, you need to drive. So issues around pricing and that sort of thing aren't really the biggest driver. I think in the long term, though, we've got to be a bit cautious about what we're seeing. My understanding in some of the analysis that I've seen around what's driving these prices, I mean, OPEC and Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, have made a concentrated, deliberate decision to not cut back on supply and keep prices low to kill off the emerging shale gas, alternate gas sector in the rest of the world. That's succeeding. We've seen a lot of projects be shelved as a result of the low prices. Now that might work and it might help the Gulf states keep their profits over the next couple of years, but eventually we're going to have supply problems, and if we haven't transitioned away from kind of the fossil fuel intensive industries that we've got, we're going to have some issues.
We're not going to have supply problems. There's endless shale oil coming out of America.
Yeah, this peak oil myth.
Poland and everywhere. Yeah.
Totally, but if we don't, even if that's the case, if we don't actually start building the infrastructure, which is what people were trying to do, then it takes a little while to gear that up. So I think there will be some issues.
Sharri, what about domestically? I mean, I saw a column from, I think it was in the AFR, by Craig Emerson flagging an increase in the fuel excise as something that could be considered by the government now that oil prices are going down. I doubt very much that they're going to look at something like that, but lower oil prices does mean a tanking of commodity prices as well, 9 times out of 10, and that means a profound impact on the budget. We saw in the update late last year that this was in play. It's probably getting worse rather than better in the countdown to the May budget.
Yeah, it's one of those flip situations where economists are saying, you know, it's going to be great for the consumers, but then not so great for our economy and the global economy as well, particularly in the medium to long term. And we're seeing a slowing of growth. China, for the first time, will have its slowest growth in 25 years, you know, less than 7%. So it's a problem. It's one of those tricky situations.
We were talking about exactly that last night. And speaking of economics, Barack Obama has focused heavily on economic reform during his State of the Union address in Washington, calling on Congress to do more to help the poor and struggling middle class. During the hour-long speech, the President said that Americans stand united with people around the world who've been targeted by terror networks. He also called on Congress to authorise the use of necessary force to protect people from the Islamic State. Now, we've focused there, Miranda, on some of the issues around terrorism, but a lot of this was really for a domestic audience around the state of the economy, suggesting that the United States was doing better and that they were coming out of it. Is this part of his legacy building?
Exactly, that's what it is. It's legacy, and I mean, it's just hokum, you know, to pretend that you know, he's done great things for the economy. You know, it's similar to what Gillard did in her last few months. He'll just try and cement. He mentioned that Reagan and Clinton both did a lot in their last 2 years. Well, God forbid.
That said, Sharri, I think that whatever you think of Barack Obama, he's looking relaxed for someone who falls into that lame duck president period. I mean, he's just lost both houses. He really doesn't have legislative control anymore, and he's still there for a while to come. But he looks like he's just decided to become a rhetorical president in a way that makes him look confident, even if he's not achieving much at the end of his term. That at least avoids, to some extent, I suppose, the stigma of the lame duck, you know, in that sort of media sense.
I'm not sure he was overconfident in that speech. I think, you know, when he gave that whole section on stopping the politicking and let's be more bipartisan, that shows how concerned he is about the fact that, you know, the Senate's now for the first time in his presidency controlled by Republicans. The other thing that really annoyed me about his State of the Union address was when he spoke about terrorism, and he said that the United States was winning the war on ISIS. Well, it's not. What evidence is there that any of us are winning the war on ISIS? I don't think we are. We're having repeated attack after attack in all parts of the world from, you know, people who have been trained in Iraq and Syria returning to Western countries. There is zero evidence to support his claim, and it was just irresponsible, really.
Your view, Osman?
Yeah, it's weird to agree with Miranda again, but I think she's right. I think
what is going on here? Like,
yeah. The plan failed. You wanted a bit of heated
three
debate,
on our Contrarian Thursday edition, let me tell you. Sorry, go on.
No worries. I think, like, you know, the President can hardly go out there in the State of the Union and say the economy's ruined, we're not going to recover, everything's falling apart. Like, something like that is exactly what would set the economy on a bit of a downward spiral. But I think, like, you know, if there is a bit of a recovery in the economy, it doesn't mean that we're out of the woods in the States. And it's hard to see exactly what Obama's managed to achieve with a hostile Congress, first in the reps and now in the Senate, to actually contribute to that economic redevelopment.
In a sense, for his legacy, this is going to be his problem going forward, is that he gets attacked from the right, but he also gets attacked from the left for having been underwhelming. He's going to find himself in that awkward middle where there's not that many people that think that he's done a good job. But there you go. I'm not sure that, yeah, well, anyway, the middle, I don't want to claim her in the middle. I like to put myself there. All right, stay with us here on PVO News Hour. Our panel doesn't know what's coming up next, but they're going to have to talk sport with James Bracey, who will join us after the break as the Swans enjoy a small victory against the AFL.
Hi. Hi. I hear Progressive has lots of discounts on car insurance. How does it work?
Well, are you a homeowner?
Yes.
Discount.
Have you had the same insurance for a few years?
Yes.
Discount. Do you insure more than one car?
Yes.
Discount. Aren't these discounts great?
Yes!
There's no discount for enthusiasm.
Yeah, I got a little carried away there.
Story of my life.
Discounts worth shouting about. Now that's progressive.
Another Nature's Way health idea. The old way of taking your vitamins was hard. Now it's easy with Nature's Way Vita Gummies. Vita Gummies combine key vitamins and minerals with delicious fruit flavours. There's a family multi with 14 key vitamins and minerals, omega-3, fibre and vitamin C. So say goodbye to hard vitamin tablets and hello to yummy Nature's Way Vita Gummies. Vitamins never tasted so good. Only from Nature's Way.
Why can't we put energy to sleep at night?
At Hitachi, we're inspired by challenging questions. That's why, using our advanced power systems and information technologies, we're creating integrated solutions to help cities meet the growing demand for energy, today and tomorrow. Hitachi Social Innovation.
It's our future.
Hitachi, inspire the next.
Your local Mitre 10 has everything you need to get in, get out and get on with it.
Dulux Wash and Wear or Weather Shield, 6 litres, just $72.90 each. Mighty handy hose lock retractable hose, only $99.
That's mighty helpful, Mitre 10.
Who the flaming heck put that there?
Dude.
Don't dude me, you long-haired yahoo.
Eat a Snickers. Better?
Better. You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers really satisfies.
Australia's biggest stocktake sale is in its final days. Take a further 30% off the already reduced price of red-ticketed women's, men's and children's clothing, footwear, intimate apparel, handbags and homewares. Cannot be used with other offers. Ends Monday. Don't miss out.
Fox Classics takes you on a journey from the golden era of Australian cinemas.
You're coming to a palace that was majestic.
To the advent of television.
Welcome to television.
Over 3 weeks, interviews with iconic Australians. And narrated by Graham Blundell.
Motion pictures were the most popular form of mass entertainment the world had ever known.
Saturday night at the movies, Saturday 7:30. Fox Classics.
With only a week of campaigning in Queensland 2015, the leaders are face-to-face for the first time. Newman and Palaszczuk will slug it out, fielding questions from undecided voters, live and unscripted. The Sky News Courier Mail People's Forum, Friday.
Welcome back. You're watching PVO News. My auto cue just says, now let's check in with James Bracey for the latest in sport. And that's it, nothing. So what is making news in sport?
Well, that's usually what you say to me anyway. What is making news? You actually...
Even normally you give me kind of a couple of dot points or something.
No, we usually talk in the ad break, but there's other people on the set these days. We've changed things up, Peter.
You also thought it was Sharri, not Sharri?
Well, I've always heard it as Sharri, so Sharri.
Maybe I should start correcting him.
Maybe it's Paul Murray. Maybe he's been saying it wrong and I've just heard him saying it.
You know, I actually think everyone's been saying it wrong. There's a friend of mine from school who talks on the business channel. They call him Ben LeBrun. His name is Ben LeBrun.
Oh,
that's what he's been called through his entire time at school, but he now goes by Ben LeBrun. Anyway, Ben, if you're watching, there you go.
And that's your theory about Anastasia Palaszczuk, that her name is actually pronounced some other way, but
she just decided to make it as easy as possible. Still doesn't help me, of course. I still can't work it out. But as I say, come the end of January, who cares? She's gone. All right, James, let's get back to sport.
Yeah, you want to know what's happening? Australian Open, day 3, after 11 Aussies got through from the
they
first
all got
2
wiped
days,
out today?
Slowly, one by one. Things aren't going according to plan. James Duckworth today, Marinko Matosevic. Neither of them were expected to probably get through. James Duckworth lost to Richard Gasquet of France, 24th seed. Marinko Matosevic was up against Andy Murray, so that was always going to be.
Did they at least put a fight up, or was it
straight sets? It was. Yeah, it wasn't pretty to watch. But at the moment, Nick Kyrgios is out on court. He's looking good. Likely that he'll go through. He's up. He'll be up into the 3rd round after that. And we also have Sam Groth and Thanasi Kokkinakis out on against each other. So we're guaranteed having at least one.
So we've got enough players through. As long as they all are drawn against each other, we might get someone through.
That's it. You get guaranteed. And then it's likely that if Bernard Tomic wins tonight, that the winner of that match will play him. So that means we'll be guaranteed someone in the 4th round.
Oh, perfect.
How do you pronounce that name again?
Thanasi Kokkinakis.
Very good.
That actually say it 3 times in a row.
Took me a Kokkinakis. Notice I didn't say the first name as well, otherwise it would have been a massive strife.
It wasn't actually intentional. Does anyone here watch the tennis at the Australian Open before, say, the semi-finals?
I normally don't, but I spent about 6 hours in emergency after a motorbike accident. That's all they had on, so there you go.
You're an expert.
Yeah.
You did the next Bruce McAvaney.
The first part of the story was more interesting. What happened?
Oh, it was just a bit wet and I was on my bike and I kind of braked too quickly at the light, so thanks to the lovely people at
Green
St.
on his
Vincent's
bike,
for looking
falling
after
over.
me.
A lot of viewers out there that wouldn't be too sympathetic, I'm willing to guess.
The motorbike, not a bicycle.
Oh, right.
Not a bike.
Well, that's all right.
Yeah, that's all right.
A healthy, gas-guzzling motorbike. All right, let's move on. What else is...
Okay, a big warning for the Aussie cricketers. We know there's a bit of toing and froing going on with the Indians, and the speak English comment from David Warner seemed to sort of stir the pot a bit.
I know this one. He's not in the team. He hasn't been selected.
Now, he's out with hamstring soreness. You
don't believe it?
Well, there's questions have been asked whether it's disciplinary, but the Australian cricket officials don't want to actually say it is, so he's not going to play Friday. But the ICC chief executive today said that the Cricket World Cup, when it starts on February 14, they'll be cracking down on any sledging. All the banter on the field, they want to clean up the game.
What's your view on that as a sports
It has gotten a
reporter?
bit out of control. And if you really do look at the sledging, most of it comes when the Australian team's playing. Whether it's us focusing on it or not, I think the way the ICC we're talking about today is they're talking Ashes series, they're talking the Indian series, whether it's Test or one day.
But is it cricket without sledging?
Yeah,
well, no, that's it.
Then isn't sledging just a part of sport?
Well,
part of cricket.
You're never going to get rid of... I don't think they want to get rid of sledging. I think it's the fact that there's so many camera angles, so many microphones out there.
You're thinking about marketing.
Things,
Miranda, as a mother of young children, I mean, what's your view? I mean, do you worry about it or do you think it's part of the game?
Well, it's just part of the game. Look, as long as they're not swearing, I don't...
They're always swearing, don't worry about that. I mean, you can see that.
I don't actually approve of the sledging, but it is just an integral part of cricket. And I think it's because it's such a long, boring game that they have to have something to engage their minds, that focuses on the game. Because it doesn't happen in rugby. I mean, a little bit, but, in rugby, it's just they haven't got time.
In rugby, they just urinate up against cars when they're on their wedding, isn't that?
Well, I agree.
Oh, sorry, Rugby. You're talking union.
You need these little personal duels. I think the ICC is just worried that sometimes they go too far. And
what
we
do they
see it
want
all.
Dave Warner to say? Excuse me to his opponent. Could you please move out the way?
Or would you please repeat your insult to me in English?
Osman, you look like you just bite into the bit to get in.
No. I love cricket, and I think sledging's definitely part of it. I think the problem is if it's racist, that's definitely too far. And I think the ICC and the Australian Cricket Commission, they should come in and actually say that's not on.
Do you think he was being racist when he said that?
Oh, look, I have no idea what he intended to say. Like, maybe it was actually a misunderstanding. Maybe he's racist. I think we actually have tribunals and processes for dealing with that. I don't think we need to blow everything out of proportion, but there are processes.
There's sledging in parliamentary question time. I mean, are we going to crack down on that as well? Like, where does this end?
They don't scream out, speak English. Actually, they probably go.
They probably do. Yeah.
Much worse.
It's Australian, not to sledge. Look, I think the part I liked about Dave Warner was when he said when Rohit Sharma spoke back to him in English, he goes, "Oh, I wouldn't want to repeat what he said." So,
that was the best line.
How's that for that? That's the true sledge. Because imagine if he didn't actually say something rude, he's now just sledged him badly.
Yeah.
And isn't the other part of the problem, I think someone mentioned, the cameras and the microphones that are everywhere that are picking up everything that's being said, whereas previously you wouldn't know. You might hear about it if someone talked about it at the press conference afterwards, but now there's cameras flying down and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, spider cam hanging over them as well. You're going to see it. Hey,
we have no time on show, but James, you want to...
We have an Australian through to the third round. Nick Kyrgios just won in 4 sets. So
but he was against an Aussie, right?
Good news. No, he wasn't. Yes.
Okay, but he was always going to win. He was the good one.
Yeah, Phil Colshriver, he's beaten, so he's through.
Straight sets, did you say?
It's 4.
4 sets.
4
okay,
out of 5.
There you go. Not straight. We are out of time, though. Thanks one and all for your company. Hope to see you all again. Have to see James tomorrow. It's Contrarian's edition of PVO News Hour tomorrow. I'm not quite sure how that differentiates from the rest of the week now that we've changed up the format, but we'll work it out tomorrow in our morning conference, and then you'll find out. See you then.